Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about book number 2 in the Mistborn trilogy, Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. So for this review, I'm going to give a brief description of the story and my general non-spoilery thoughts on the story itself, and then we're going to move over to the spoiler section where I'm going to talk pros and cons. So with that being said, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and let's begin. So in Well of Ascension, after all the excitement and stuff that happened at the end of the Final Empire, this book kind of slows down. After everything that went down at the end of that book, we have to do basically some rebuilding and reconstruction and, all this kind of stuff. So everybody has to get their bearings again and get their feet up under them. So the entire government system has to be restructured and all this stuff. So this book has a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of just political talking and posturing and maneuvering and all this kind of stuff. So that's a huge chunk of this book. So if you're not a big fan of that, then you're probably going to struggle getting through this a little bit. I know I did in some parts. But overall, it's a lot of fun. The information that gets presented in this one is next level. Brandon really starts to dig into the Cosmere in this book. So it gets exciting. When he starts name dropping stuff that you won't really know what it is, but it has this huge significance. So you're like, oh wow, what's that? So it's a lot of fun. I really like the information that is learned in this book, but the story itself is kind of just so-so to me. But even though the story is only kind of so-so, I really love the characters. I continue to love them a lot because Brandon did a great job in book 1, and he continues that in this one by basically taking away the crew's leader. So the crew has to stand on their own and they have no centralized leadership and stuff, and so that gives Brandon this chance to kind of play with the characters more and deepen their stories and give us a more well-rounded understanding of who they are, what they can do, all that kind of stuff. So I really like that a lot, because in the first book they very much felt just almost extras. It was the Kelsier and Vin show. In this book we get a lot more of everyone else. So that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. So Well of Ascension is really good. I like it a lot. There's a good mystery in this story, which kind of distracted me a little bit from the political intrigue, and I got bored with it. I was able to focus on this other stuff that was going on. And Brandon continues to do great work with his characters, and he builds out the world a little better, the Cosmere more than anything. And he just continues to do a great job. I think this is a really good second entry in the trilogy. It feels very much like the settling point before we ramp back up, but even with that in mind, it's still a really good story, so I can't recommend it enough. So that'll do it for my generic non-spoilery thoughts on the book. So everything from here is going to be spoiler section. So those are going to be my generic non-spoilery thoughts for Well of Ascension. So everything from here going forward will be spoilers. So that's your spoiler warning. So let's get started with my first pro. So pro number 1 has to be the characters. As I said before, Brandon took away Kelsier because Kelsier is dead now, and we now have to deal with the crew without their leader, without their, he's literally deified now, but we have to understand the crew without their, their guiding light, their North Star. And so it's a lot of fun to see them floundering a little bit, but then figuring it out and dealing with it and stuff. So it's just stuff and it's stuff that even Kelsier wouldn't have been able to help them with because they don't know how to rule a kingdom and all this kind of stuff. So now they're all political people and whatnot. So I think it was a lot of fun. Brandon did a good job deepening the characters, who they are, giving us a more well-rounded view of who they are and what they can do, and just living with these characters more. So that's one of the best parts of a series. You can kind of live with these characters and sit with them. So it was very heartbreaking, towards the end when the battles started happening, people started actually dying. I was but it was, again, it's one of those things where you're yeah, I can appreciate it because you're not afraid to kill off your characters, but oh no, I like that person. So it's very much that. So it's definitely a pro of the book for me. I love the use of the characters and the development of them and the deepening their stories and their relatability. But with my love of all the characters that we had before, the flip side of that is I don't really like a couple of the new characters that we got. So that'll be con number 1. So my first con is Tyndwell and Zane. I didn't care for those characters. Like Tyndall, I felt like she existed to give Sazed something. Like that's kind of what it felt like. Like yeah, she was helping Ellen with all the king stuff and all this kind of stuff. So like, but it didn't feel like, I don't know, it didn't feel very necessary. She really, every time she was helping Ellen, it just felt like she was there to bitch at him. Like she was just there to yell at him, tell him he's stupid, and like basically chop away at who he was and try to turn him into this other kind of monarch figure that he wasn't. But I get the point was kind of like, you know, take all of this but mold it and make it your own kind of thing. So which, you know, he eventually did, but like I didn't get much out of her. It felt much like a character that could have just been completely left out. But like her relationship with Sazed and then the fact she ends up dying and stuff like that is like a big deal. And so it feels like she only existed to serve Sazed's story. Like first she helped Ellen, then she goes to help Sazed. So like she doesn't feel like a character in and of herself. And same thing with Zane. Zane feels like he only exists to kind of tease this much not wanted love triangle potential. And like I really didn't want that, and I'm so happy Brandon sidestepped it. He's got a bit of a habit of that. He sidesteps love triangles quite a bit, I'm starting to notice. But Zane, I feel like Zane didn't really exist other than to basically set up the Venture having another son and the whole thing. Like when he dies, like after Vin kills him, and then we find out the voice in his head is Ruin, and like so I feel like it just sets up this idea that Ruin is able to directly talk to people, and like especially people who aren't quite right in the head and stuff like that. So I feel like his entire existence, because he mostly didn't do much of anything through the whole story. He just kept trying to like, come on, Vin, be Mistborn with me and skip your husband and all that stuff, go be with me. Like it was just so annoying a little bit to me. But like he only seemed to exist to then confirm to us that Ruin can actually influence people, certain types of people and stuff like that. So he didn't feel like an actual character. He just felt like a plot device. So that's why I didn't really care for him, and those are the reasons why I didn't care for Tyndall, so that's why they live in con number 1. So in the same way that Brandon deepens the character development, like lets us live with those characters more, we kind of get to do that a little bit with the Cosmere. So this whole story has been a little bit of a sprinkle into the Cosmere, and then like we get to this book, like he starts to just drop like shard names and stuff like that. Like we actually find out about ruin and preservation and stuff, and they're kind of talking about this Cosmere stuff, but not so explicitly that we, it's taken away from other stories or anything like that. But he's deepening this world and the mythology that exists on this world and all this stuff, and I love that. It's so much fun when like you find out more about like what the well actually is and like the interpretation of the log book and all this kind of stuff that was going on. I think it feels like a good mystery. But with the expansion of the Cosmere and deepening the understanding of that lore and stuff like that, we have kind of another flip side. So my second con is going to have to be the lack of geographical world building. Like, I don't really understand the geography of the entire world. Like, I don't understand, I understand they're in Luthadale in the central dominance, but I don't understand the other dominances. I don't understand where, Ellen's dad was held up at. I don't understand where that other guy was. I don't understand I don't understand much of it. Like, is the continent gigantic enough that each of these dominances are like countries, and Luthadale is like a gigantic city? I don't understand the scope and the size and stuff like that. I really wish Brandon would have gone into more detail about that kind of stuff, because I'm honestly very confused about just the general setting. If we're outside of Luthadale, it's very hazy to me. So that becomes one of my cons. I would expect by book 2 for us to get more explicit, hard detail on this kind of information so I can have a better scope and scale. I'm wondering if it's just one of those things where it's only ever explained in terms that, are consistent with the world inside the book, so maybe it went over my head and I, didn't quite, because the naming and all that stuff, or maybe I just need to get a map to read the maps and stuff. Because I didn't have much understanding of the geography of the world, much less outside of the main city, Luthadale, it kind of made any other location feel very stagnant. So I ended up having a similar problem with the political stuff. So that's why that becomes con number 3. The political intrigue, while it can work in some stuff, like it kind of works in Game of Thrones because it's always about catty conversations and stuff like that, and it's on TV or whatever. It's like in here, so the political stuff in this story to me feels completely worthless because we understand the scope and scale of stuff now. Like we understand, like there's literally a pool of God power just hanging out that Vin is supposed to grab. So like we're dealing with stuff on that level. So what do I care if this kingdom is under siege? All of it could be gone in a minute. So why do I care that Ellen's dad is whining about Adium or whatever, or this old accuser or inquisitor wants to like rule and like. So all of that kind of little political stuff I didn't care about at all because like I was like none of this matters. We have a bigger deal. Like there's something much bigger going on. So none of this matters. So I couldn't care less about it. Like I just couldn't care less about the political stuff. And it just to me it kind of felt it didn't really like drag the story down, but it like for me I was like yes. But then it was like okay I guess well let's hear them talk. It took me out of it when, like, you know, you got good pace and good momentum, and then you got to sit down and have a conversation with some monarchs or whatever. So I didn't care for that much at all. So that's why that's going to be con number 3. So let's go ahead and wrap it up with my final pro. So pro number 3 has got to be the main character. As I said before, Vin is a great character. She's definitely my favorite part of this story and the entire trilogy, really. So then, like, in and of herself, as powerful as she is and as skilled as she is and, like, all the stuff she's learned and all that, she could easily become a Mary Sue type character. Everything could easily be so insanely easy for her, and it would be just so boring, and she would be just kind of a lame character. But I love the fact that Brandon, like, just makes her so not a Mary Sue even a little bit. Like, she makes mistakes. She gets manipulated. She gets tricked. She's got a temper. She, like, all kinds of stuff. So, like, nothing... Like, she's not perfect, but she learns and she figures it out and, like, she makes sacrifices and she was literally just trying to do what was good. She was trying to be the hero and trying to, like, save everybody by releasing the power and all that stuff. But what she did was release ruin and, like, made everything much worse. So it's like, it's a brilliant use of a character. It's almost like a Mary Sue archetype, but then just clearly purposely flipped it. So, and whatever, mindset Brandon was in as he wrote her, I love it and I applaud it. I think it's one of the best female characters I've ever read, really. Well, that'll do it for my Well of Ascension review. What do you guys think of it? And what are some of your favorite second books in the trilogy? And don't just say Empire Strike Back or something like that. So let me know in the comments down below. And remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will talk to you all next time. Peace.